This podcast was produced on the traditional lands of the Dharawal people. We wish to pay our respects to the elders, past, present, and those emerging.
I think to live a rich life, which is what I want to do, in the face of what I couldn't do, that it drives me more than anything else. To live the richest life I can live. It's to balance those two things, It's to balance the times of wintering, of stillness, of introspection, with the times of going out into the world and, putting yourself out there and doing something big and brave, which is my hashtag, that is beyond your comfort zone, that you don't think you can do. Like it's for me anyway. And I don't say for a moment, I always say, I'm not saying in writing my books or doing podcasts like this that I want anyone to live their life like me. In fact, I'd rather you didn't live your life like me, because that would be too much competition. I want you to live your life like you. And if there's anything in my story that can inspire you, then that is what I'm trying to put into the world. Because as I always say, we all have sad stuff. My sad stuff was that I couldn't have a baby with the man that I love, and then I went on to lose that man. But I think you have to take your sad shit stuff and turn it into something good for yourself, number one, and if you can, for other people. That's my life philosophy, along with struggle well, which we talked about in the last podcast, and actually is in my book.
Welcome to the Full Stop Podcast, hosted by Sarah Lawrence, Bernie Smith, and me, Michael Hughes, where we, with all our special guests, explore what it means to be childless, and hoping we can help you feel validated, seen, and inspired, and in turn help you navigate this very different life to the one we thought we were going to have. This episode, we welcome back the absolutely inspirational Jessica Hepburn, where we talk about her upcoming memoir, Save Me From the Waves. I think you will very quickly realise how much love and respect we have for Jessica. And we also identify a couple of challenges for you to take up for her and perhaps give some love back. Oh, and keep an eye on our social media to how you can win a signed copy of her book. And you can find all our links at www.thefullstoppod.com, and you can also sign up for our listeners list to keep up to date with what's going on in the wider childless not by choice world. And while you're there, you can also find out about joining our own private online community. Okay, let's get talking to Jessica.
Welcome to the Full Stop Podcast for the second time, Jessica Hepburn. How are you today?
I'm very good, thank you. Happy Sunday morning or Sunday evening to Michael and anyone who's on the other side of the world.
Indeed, yes. So here we all are. We're actually doing a thing in our online community where we're arranging to come down to the book launch. So we're all...
Yes, please join me. 5th of March. I have to really focus when I say 5th of March, because official publication day is the 7th of March. But because very excitingly, the Lyric, which is my theatre home, I ran it for a decade, have offered me the main house, 550 seats to fill, but the only day they could do was the Tuesday the 5th. So I keep mixing them up. So Tuesday the 5th of March. Oh, I'm excited to hear that.
I know, we've literally got a little gathering going on, so we can all go and do drinks and nibbles or food or whatever before we come down, so that we're all fed, watered, and on the way.
Jolly. There may even be a little singing. Just saying. A little audience participation. Just no pressure.
We're all up
to say. Right. Oh wow! Now we're going to come on mass, aren't we? Hopefully, so
yes, just to warn you, that's going to happen, Jessica. Not that We'll fill the seats, don't you worry.
Oh, good, thanks. And Michael, I'm just exploring whether, because I was going to do a live launch and an online launch, and that's still in the sort of offing. But because this launch is becoming such an exciting thing, I'm definitely thinking of recording it and potentially live streaming it. So you could even join us from the other side of the world if you want to.
I'll stick it in my diary.
Thank
Hey,
you.
before we go on, Jessica, obviously we know who you are, but there'll be a lot of our audience that won't know who you are. Well, there'll probably be one or two, I would imagine. But how about, who are you and what do you do?
Oh. So I just thank you for that reminder that I am that yes, of course, I don't assume anyone knows who I am, but and I've got what I know is a weird job title in that, but I'm really settling into it now. So I describe myself as an author, arts producer, and adventure activist. And the arts producer, which is the middle bit, is the easiest bit to describe. And in a way that riffs off just what we've been talking about, because for most of my early career, I worked in the arts, specifically the theatre. And for a decade, I ran the Lyric Hammersmith, which is a big theatre in London, West London, for those people who don't know it. And as we were just talking about, as we came into the podcast, my book launch is going to be there in March. The launch of my third book, which is called Save Me from the Waves. And that's the author part of my job. So, in fact, this is an extraordinary time to be talking to you and for this third book to be coming out, because it was a decade ago that my first book came out, exactly a decade ago in February. And that book was called The Pursuit of Motherhood. It was what it says on the title. It was my journey through 11 rounds of unsuccessful IVF, what I call my misery memoir, although hopefully there are a few laughs in it too. In fact, someone wrote to me yesterday, I did a talk the week before last, and someone said they were reading it and it was making them laugh yesterday morning. So that filled me with joy. And so that came out a decade ago. And then I went on to write another book, which was called 21 Miles, Swimming in Search of the Meaning of Motherhood. And then there's this third book. And that all brings me neatly onto the third part, which is adventure activist. So I always say, when I turned 43, after my 11th round of unsuccessful IVF, I basically decided I needed to do something different. And the thing that I decided to do was that I was going to swim the English Channel, which was nuts because I wasn't a very good swimmer. And I had no idea what was involved, but it was a journey that changed my life. And it led on to me taking on these big physical and mental endurance challenges to raise awareness of what it's like to go through an unsuccessful fertility journey, which I think is the other biggest physical and mental endurance challenge. But also because these adventures that I've been on have changed my life for the better in so many ways, infinitely. And this third book, and this is the end of this long introduction, is called, as I said, called Save Me from the Waves. And it's about my journey from the top of Parliament Hill in London, where I live, to the top of the world, literally Everest, although I call her Chomolungma. We might come on to talk about that, which is her original Tibetan Sherpa name. And it was all fueled by listening to every episode of my favorite radio program, Desert Island Discs. That's me in a nutshell. How long did that take? I'm trying to get it quicker.
I thought that was really speedy, actually, given everything you had to cover.
Bless you, Sarah. Bless you.
Yeah, proper pro. That was fun. And I love the fact that it's 3 A's in your.
Do you know what, Berenice? Thank you. Whenever I give a talk these days, I always start with, this is my job title, and I then go, I love alliteration. I just and also it's a bit you have to be strict with yourself in writing, because I sort of have got to a point in my writing where I just want everything to have alliteration. Whenever I write a word, I'm like, oh, where can I find a word that can go with it that has the same letter at the beginning? So I just mustn't overuse it. But I absolutely love alliteration. And I also love the number 3. Like 3 is my favorite number. So yeah. There we go.
3 books. 3 books, 3 adventures as well. Amazing. So,
but you've got to actually, I know that wasn't a question, but it's actually quite a good question, because you've got to find the patterns in life, and also I know, the Full Stop podcast is particularly geared at people who've been on they might not have been on a fertility journey, but have been on a childless journey, whatever that looks like for them. And like part of what I think I've done successfully, if I've done anything successfully, is that I've made sense of what I've been through and made a story about it, both literally in the form of a book, but metaphorically, sort of in terms of how I think about my life. And these patterns, like the 3s and the alliteration even, they're an important part of me reaching peace about what has been a very, very hard journey for me.
I like that. It's finding a life hook. That's what sort of pops in my head when I'm listening to you. Because it is, isn't it? I know Jodie's talked about this too. It's this term, living a life unexpected, and trying to make some sense of it.
Definitely. And I think everyone, like also for those people who know a lot about psychology, and Sarah, I'm sure will have heard this, coherence is so important in terms of making sense of our lives, and particularly the trauma of our life, making a coherent story out of what it was, why it happened, what it led to, what can come out of that is really, really important in the healing process. And I think that is what I've been trying to do. Yeah.
Could you talk a bit more about that? Jessica, Sarah, about coherence, just for listeners who aren't familiar with it, because that sounds really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, Sarah, what would you say about this term of coherence?
I think for me, it's putting yourself back together again with a new story and a new person. You're a new person, so for me, I always visualize it as I was one person before my childlessness. I fell apart. And then I had to put myself back together again. But that falling apart will always be part of my narrative, my being, who I am, and my story. And I think part of the counselling when I work with people is helping them make sense of their falling apart and putting themselves back together again. And you will always be a changed, different person. But I think what I love about it is we find our meanings in different ways. So for Jessica climbs a mountain or swims the channel. For some of us, it might be changing jobs, or it might just be, I really want to go and do this adventure, whatever that is. And I think it's finding our own story and our own way of doing it, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's my view.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that really, I caught myself then when I was talking, because I really, I must never assume, and I hope I never do assume, that everyone's story is the same as mine. Everyone, and again, this is something that Jodie Day, you mentioned, Jodie Berenice talks about a lot. The 50 ways of becoming childless, or the 50 ways to lose, off the spin-off the Paul Simon song of 50 ways to lose your lover. Like everyone's story, and this is what's. I am in a really good place now, so I have to apologize that I get a bit excited. Like this is amazing that we all have very, very different stories in this childlessness arena, and we can take our own story and make whatever we want out of it. And it's going to look completely different from everyone else's. And in a world where, and I suffer from it as well, particularly with a book coming out, you're putting yourself out into the world. You can't help but compare yourself to everybody else who's doing better than you, or seems to be living a more exciting life, or, and I know that people might look at me and think, how do you say that? But of course I feel that as well. I absolutely feel those feelings of inadequacy as well. But I think what's exciting for people is that your story is totally unique, and how you make sense of it, how you make sense of your childlessness and what came during it and after it is totally yours, and you can own that in whatever way you like. And that, I think, is exciting. And that is what I've tried to do with my own life.
I think that's amazing, because it just gives people some hope that something can be different. And it's something I know that I personally struggled with, that falling apart and putting back together. And I'd say it's probably largely down to having role models who've done that. And certainly I think your story, and also Stella Duffy as well, when she came on the podcast, and there was just a moment in our recording where I had to kind of like, and we both kind of caught each other, because our journey through IVF was very similar, and how that can carry on through your life. But people come to this space for lots and lots of different reasons. It's partly why the podcast keeps going. In this episode 60 we're recording, because we've had 60 more than that people's stories to share.
Yeah.
And that
Stella's story is amazing, because actually, I mean, like, Stella is a force of nature, so I'm not taking any credit at all, but Stella and her partner Shelley were in my festival, Fertility Fest, which is, I know, where you three met. And actually Shelley had written a play about IVF, but they hadn't really spoken together sort of on stage about their fertility journey. And Stella is a campaigner on so many different fronts, that it hadn't necessarily been the sort of central part of her activism, I would say. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to speak for her, but I think I would be right in saying that. Whereas actually now, she's really talking about it much, much more, and it's much more. And again, it's just such a good example that we all have different routes into this and different stories to tell.
It's interesting, isn't it? Talking about stories and voices and narratives. Do you find that your story and your voice has changed as your books have come out, Jessica? Has it evolved?
Oh, that's such a good question, Sarah. Yes and no, right? No, in the sense that I've written 3 books where I am the central narrator. This is like a trilogy of work. And this last one that's coming out in March, I do very much see as the last in a trilogy of narrative, non-fiction, adventure stories. And I do very much see my IVF journey as my first adventure now. And with me as the central narrator. And after this, I am either never going to write like this again, or I'm not going to write like this again for a long time. So, I mean, never say never, but like, I definitely see this as a body of work, and this is it. And so, no, in the sense that I think if you read all my books, you would hear the same voice. I write in the same, I try to write, it's me, and it's the way I write to the world. And I am the central narrator. But yes, in the sense that I think my writing has really developed. And this third book, like the first book, The Pursuit of Motherhood, was, I mean, I like glibly call it my misery memoir, but it was quite a straightforward journey through IVF, And then in 21 Miles, I tried to do this thing where I was swimming, I was coming out of fertility, I was swimming the channel. It was sort of inspirational memoir rather than misery memoir. It's a journey of healing, but also I interviewed these 21 famous women as to whether motherhood makes you happy. And so I was sort of combining another element, which is complicated to do. And, like publishers at the time didn't think that I could make it work. And I hope I did. And then this book, the third book, is different again, in that it involves, like what I can be absolutely sure of is that no one has ever written a book like this, in the sense that, it's not just about someone who's been through unsuccessful IVF and is childless, although that's a theme. It's not about someone who's climbed Everest as a result of that, although that is part of it. It's also very much about music, and which has come out of this listening to every single episode of Desert Island Disc, my favorite radio program. So it is all these 3 things. And that is really complicated. And one of the fears, and I'll be really honest with you, I mean, like, it's amazing because I've got an amazing publisher. There was a small publishing auction for it, and I've really struggled with to get my writing noticed in the past. I had to self-publish my first book, but I've had a small publishing auction for this, but there's a lot of publishing excitement. But one of the fears that I have is that my core readership might not like it as much as the other books, because it's not as straightforward as The Pursuit of Motherhood. Probably of all my books, The Pursuit of Motherhood has sold the best, and it keeps selling. Like I told you, like someone was reading it this weekend, because that audience of people going through fertility treatment is always regenerating itself. But then I also have a group of people who I know absolutely love 21 Miles, and I worry, like, this is much more sophisticated, complex book that the publishing world love, but like, will my core readership love it? I have no idea. But like, you've got to keep developing. So sorry, again, that's a long answer. Yes and no.
I want to take you back a touch to what you said earlier about Desert Island Discs. So we go around the world. There may be some people that don't know about Desert Island Discs. And so, in your words, Jessica, what is Desert Island Discs, and why is it special to you?
Oh, Michael, what a question. What a question, just because this is my passion, right? This radio program. The first thing to say is, wherever you are in the world, you can listen to it, because it's a BBC radio program that is available worldwide. BBC, British Broadcasting Corporation, our public service broadcaster, and it is what they would describe as the jewel in their crown in terms of radio shows, because it's one of the longest BBC radio shows running ever. It's been running since 1942. So it's just celebrated a year or so ago, its 80th anniversary, and it's been running for all that time. And that's why the listening to every single episode was like a massive task, because it was like an Everest of listening. It was there have been over 3,000 episodes. And the brilliance of the format is this. So guests on the show who have been basically the who's who of British 20th century history, but it also has guests from all over the world. Plenty of Australian guests, American guests, if you've got people listening, are invited to. They're invited to be cast away on a desert island, and when they're cast away on this desert island, they have to choose 8 records, 1 book, and 1 luxury item to take with them. That's all. And the format of the story of the show, which is like 40 to 45 minutes long, is about them talking through this selection. And what is extraordinary about it is that, first of all, when it was first aired, it was the first ever sort of autobiographical confessional interview on the radio. I mean, like nowadays, this is everywhere. We're doing it right now in a podcast, people talking about their life. But when Desert Island Discs started, people didn't do this, and certainly famous people or successful people did not talk about their life. But what the music does is that it makes them talk about their life in a way that sometimes they don't even realize how sort of deep they're going. And that is why it remains, even with like confessional interviews everywhere now, such a special thing, because the music provides the anchor for people talking about their life and their feelings. And, even in the last few years, you will hear people on, like, a really good example. And one of the things I'm doing at the moment is recommending different episodes for people to listen to. And like, I'll give you a really example. Everyone will probably know this person, Tom Hanks, the film actor Tom Hanks. Go and listen to his episode, because he's a really, really good example of how it gets you, because he only did probably Desert Island Discs because because he was told by his publicist that it was an important program in the UK when he was bringing out a film. And so he did it. Like, he's probably very selective about what press he does. And he chose his 8 songs, and he talks about how he got into the movies. And there's just this moment in the episode where it just hits him, and he gets really emotional. And you can tell he didn't even realize, he's such a professional. He doesn't even realize it's gonna hit him like this. And that is the beauty of the program. It's about memory revealed through the music. And I'm a Desert Island Disc devotee, as you can tell. So I hope that's a little example of a description of what it is, Michael. Thanks.
And so how does it, without giving any spoilers about your book, how does it parallel with your book? You said earlier that it was a big inspiration. Yeah.
So what I can tell you is the very first chapter of the book is that I'm training for the London Marathon. So after the Channel, and I felt really healed, very much so, in terms of my fertility journey coming out of the Channel, but then my relationship broke down. And I always say, like, it heaped loss upon loss, like the double loss just broke me. It absolutely broke me. And I turned to adventuring again. And the first thing I did was that I decided I was going to run the London Marathon. And I'm delighted I ran the London Marathon. It's something that's always been on my bucket list. It's my home city. But I was a terrible runner. And I wasn't really enjoying it. And I decided that I had to go on this 18-mile training run, that I would listen to something to get me through. And I wasn't even, I wasn't even listening to music at that point, because I'm not good on technology. And I was just sort of like, I'm doing this thing, let's get it over with, grit your teeth. Anyway, I decided I'd listen to something, and I decided that I would listen to an episode of Desert Island Discs. And it was just right, this is in 2017, when the podcast thing was really taking off, and the BBC had made Desert Island Discs into a podcast, so you could listen to it. You didn't have to listen to it live. And I listened to the comedian Jimmy Carr, and he just said this thing when he was choosing his music. He just said this thing through my headphones into my heart: what do you want in life? That strikes me as the most important question. What do you want? And in that moment, I just couldn't answer what I wanted anymore, because I knew for a decade that I wanted a baby, and then I'd started to see that I could have a life without a baby, and I was going to have this life with my partner who I loved, and we were going to go on adventures together. And then that fell apart. And I just in that moment, I just didn't know what I wanted. And the only thing I could answer in that moment was, I want to go to a desert island with my 8 discs. I want to choose my 8 discs, because I've always sort of harbored this idea that I'd love to be on the show. And that really was the start of what became this journey to climb to the top of the world, listening to every single episode. And then I just started to listen, and it's taken me years both to get to the top of the world and listen to the whole archive. And the only other thing that I would say, so that's how it all started. And the only other thing that I would say, which is a sort of thing, if you read the book, that you'll hopefully experience, is to begin with in the book, it's very much like I'm listening to these people, and they're giving me their music, and they're giving me their wisdom, and it's generating all sorts of thoughts, which if you read the book, you'll understand. But what happened gradually, and what happens in the book as I write it, is that gradually these people in my head, these amazing people, they became my family. And one of the things that I do always say to anyone who is childless, myself included, is you have to find your family. And your family might not be your own children. And of course, that's the quickest route to family, and why so many of us want it. But if you can't find your family in that way, you need to find your family in other ways, because social connection is so important to human beings. And so these castaways, as the book progresses, we start talking to one another. They become my family. And what an amazing family to have, let me tell you. Some of the most amazing people, most inspirational people in the world. So that's how they sort of impact. Sorry, you've got me babbling away. You always do this, actually. You did this last time, you guys. Like, I don't know what it is. I don't know whether it's the shared experience or your brilliance as interviewers. I think it's both. But like, you get me talking in a way that is extraordinary. Thank you.
You're welcome. Michael does ask some very good questions. They both do. I'm waiting for another one to come up in a minute, don't worry. Can I just ask, if they asked you to go on Desert Island Discs, would you go on there? Or would you be getting stage fright? Would it be too much?
Berenice, if they asked me, I could die happy. I would, of course. Of course. I mean, like, I mean, I'd faint and then I would die probably happy before I'd even got on the show. But the thing is, everyone says to me, like, you're going to be on it. You're going to be on it. You know, like, also one of the interesting facts is that, you know, they've had several Everest summiteers on the show, but they haven't had a woman, of course. So I could be the first woman. But it's so hard to get on the show, right? It's like the alternative honours system in the UK. You know, it's that hard. And you know, anyone, it's like getting on Woman's Hour on BBC Radio 4 for anyone who are, you know, here that are in the British audience. You know, people, you know, like people, I finally popped my Women's Hour cherry in October, and I was so excited. And people just have said to me for a decade, well, you must have been in Women's Hour with all your fertility campaigning, and like no, it just doesn't work like that. These jewels in the BBC radio and television crown, it is virtually impossible to get on them. So, like, of course, it would be my dream, but you know, hopefully I'm going to live many years, and there are other things that I can do that might make me eligible at some point. Who knows? But I'm not holding out the hope, and it doesn't take, even if I was never on it, it doesn't take away the joy that it's given me, which has been unadulterated. Oh, sorry.
But do you have your 8 discs lined up? You know what you're going, or does it change? Because I think mine changes. If I've got a list, and it always changes because I've been a devotee since you told me about it, and I used to listen to it. Then I stopped, and then I realised I've got the archives, and they've found the lost ones. There's like some more to listen to now. I'm just like, who are these people? Because I don't know all of them.
I know, and that's also well, I love the fact that you've got to listen. In answer to that question, you have to read my book to
I thought there might be a story there.
That's the answer to that question. But like, the archive is, I mean, obviously the current programs are great because you've got people who are current, you know, at the moment, whether they're famous or not famous. I mean, actually, to be honest, everyone, you know, everyone who's on the show has got a Wikipedia site, basically. You know, like, everyone who's on the show has done something important, but not everyone is a household name like Tom Hanks. But actually, sometimes it's the people who are not household names that are, like, much more interesting. You know, like, they've had incredible lives. And yeah, the archive, I have just, you know, I always say that I'm really shit at history. Like, I'm really, really bad at remembering facts, you know. Like, God, my ex-partner, Peter, you know, the number of times he would try and teach me the years of the Battle of Waterloo versus the Battle of Trafalgar. I mean, like, I just still can't remember it. And he used to test me on it all the time. Please don't test me on it. But, like, actually listening to the show, listening to, like, 80 years of the show, like, it taught me so much, you know, like nearly all the British prime ministers have been on the show. So now, you know, I can list you all the post-war British prime ministers in a way that I never could have done before, you know, and I can list it, you know, and just like everything, you know, because also the guests are from, like, all different walks of life. The other thing that it's taught me loads about is South Africa, because a lot of the guests on the show over the last 80 years have played important roles in the struggle against apartheid. That I've learned a lot about the Holocaust. Again, a lot of people who escaped Nazi Germany have been on the show. You know, like my 20th century history has just changed, like, inordinately because of this show, as well as my music knowledge. I mean, that is just, and my love of music. I mean, I always liked music, but now it's just so central. I think I should be on commission from the actually, one other thing can I say that which is very exciting is that I've recorded in October the audiobook for the show. And one of the things that every chapter in the book starts with an epigraph from one of the castaways. And the thing that I really, really wanted was these epigraphs to be read out from the show, like the real voices of the castaways, everyone from Maya Angelou to Louis Armstrong to Emma Thompson to Edmund Hillary, who was the first man to climb Everest. And and again, you know, like the BBC are so difficult, but they have been amazing. And in October, I managed to secure the rights to get these clips. And my publisher is just like over the moon. So if you listen to the audiobook, which is possibly even more, I'd like people to listen to even more than read the real book, because the castaway voices are in the audio. I'm just so excited about that. And one of the conversations we're trying to have at the moment with my publisher is to try and, I mean, it will be on Spotify and obviously Audible, but like what we're trying to do is embed the music into the actual book. But that's a big sort of discussion that won't happen necessarily immediately. But Spotify are potentially really interested in that, because I think it works best as a reading and a listening experience, because music is so fundamental to the book. Anyway, enough.
I like to hear that. That's amazing. I worked alongside permissions people, so the rights of that's quite a coup, I have to say.
Oh, it really is. But I think it was the perfect moment, Berenice, because of course the BBC, because there's so much pressure on them now in terms of the, you know, them being a public service broadcaster, and the government are really questioning their value, that they're having to be more commercial. So, I mean, in fact, I think last year it was announced that they've sold the rights to Desert Island Discs around the world, so other people can use the format. Because up until this point, no one's ever been able to replicate anything like it in other countries. You know, it is the BBC radio programme. So I just think it was sort of perfect timing. And also, you know, like, I'm a big fan of the show, right? So, you know, hopefully I'm going to encourage other people to come and listen to it. You know, I am its super fan.
You are.
But when you think about that, Jessica, that is groundbreaking.
Yeah,
you're crossing technologies now that no one's done. I don't think anyone's done.
No, and it's so true, Michael. There's Michael with one of his good questions, because when I was talking to my pub, I literally like got the rights in October. We recorded it, the audiobook in October. The Spotify conversation happened in November. Started to happen in November, and actually Spotify are really excited about it, but the technology doesn't exist yet to embed music like that, and the rights discussions haven't happened with all the artists to embed music like that into an audio. So what's exciting is that if you listen to it in Spotify, I mean, oh God, this is an advert. I mean, I love Audible too, Audible. But if you listen to it in Spotify, at least then you're one click away from the music. Do you know what I mean? So you can go, yeah. I've listened to a chapter. Oh, I'd really like to listen to that song now. I'm already in the app. I can listen to it. You know, you don't have to come out and go somewhere else. But what would be brilliant, and we're working towards, is a situation which is like at the end of a chapter, it's like, do you want to listen to this song now, or do you want to listen to this song, or move on to the next chapter? I mean, I do think that is going to be really exciting for the book if we can make that happen.
I'm excited because I listen to a lot of audiobooks because I'm on the road a lot. So I'm excited about this.
Yeah. I think it would really, like I've tried to choose like the music that's in the book, obviously some's very personal to me but a lot of the music is I've created this algorithm of 300 artists / tracks that can be cross-referenced against every single castaway on the show. And what I propose is that this is the algorithm of songs for life, right? And a lot of them, like that, basically these are the 300 most important sort of artist songs of the last 100 years. That's kind of my proposal. This is what I mean about this book being much more, complicated and hopefully better. And so, but still, even though these are 300 quite well-known artists, from the Beatles to Beethoven, people won't always know if I'm talking about a specific song, like that song. And so it would be really interesting, and I think lovely for people to be, I'd really like to listen to that song, So I really hope we can make that happen. Anyway. Sorry, you really are getting me blaring on. I hope this is interesting for your listeners.
I'm loving it. Yeah. I'm loving it.
So is this your next Everest then? Is this your...
Well, I've done this. No, this has come to an end now. This. Do you know what? I was on the phone to my best friend this morning I have two best friends, one of my two best friends who lives in Australia, in Sydney, actually, Michael. So we always speak on a Sunday morning. And I was just saying to her this morning, I said, Tar, I'm just starting to feel, because I've made this year, like 2024 is my year of self-love, I've decided. That's another bigger conversation, but self-love is an icky phrase, but I've decided to embrace it. But I was saying to her, do you know what? I'm getting to the point. Obviously, this is going to be, part of the reason why it's the year of self-love is this is going to be a hugely busy year for me because the book's coming out. It's my first book in 6 years, there's a lot happening around it. And it's going to be like listening to the whole archive or climbing Everest, in terms of the amount of work. But I was saying to her, like, what I need next is some time off. And I just this morning thought, at some point, I don't know when it will be, but I am gonna, I'm just getting excited about the idea about actually doing nothing for a little while. So yeah, I do have an Everest. In answer to your question, Sarah, I do have an Everest to climb this year, which is getting the book into the world, which is very different from writing it, researching it, all the things I did to make it happen. And it is, and that's my Everest. But actually, in terms of what I want to do after I've done this, is that I just want to do nothing for a while.
Feels like you've earned it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Is it going to be tricky though to do nothing? How do you feel about it?
I don't. Yeah, of course it's going to be tricky, but you've got to I believe in growth, right? I'm really if you read my book, you'll see I had a very traumatic experience on Chomolungma, who saved me. She saved me, but I nearly died up there. And so the last section of my book is about songs to die to, because I think we all need a song that we want to die to, as well as our funeral songs, different things. If you read my book, you'll see why I think they're different. But I'm very, very motivated by death. And sorry if that sounds weird. But I also think, I'm 53 now. People started to around me get ill and die too soon, right? I've had quite a lot of experience of that, particularly recently. And I looked death in the face on my mountain, only for 48 hours, but I did. And so I'm really motivated by taking on challenges. And not all challenges and going on adventures need to be high and far away or 3,000 episodes of listening. For me, yes, it will be an adventure and a challenge to do nothing. But I want to try that because what's going to happen to me? Like it will be hard and the outcome is unknown, but I'm excited by what journey that offers me. And that's why, yeah, it will be hard, but I want to do it.
I love that. I think it's a really strong message, isn't it? Sometimes we've got to just sit with ourselves.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the growth things I'm noticing as well, is kind of as you do get older, you become more, I don't know, thinking more about what life brings, even if you just stop and pause and you haven't got to be herring around like doing all these different things. But actually, part of life is death, isn't it? I've had a few experiences of it lately, and it makes you quite, I don't know, I think you pause a bit, don't you? Think, well, actually, what do I want to get out of life? Like Jimmy Carr said, isn't it?
Yeah.
It means hacking up a mountain necessarily. It might be sitting with yourself and working yourself out. I love that.
Yeah, Sarah, I think it's both those things, I think to live a rich life, which is what I want to do, in the face of what I couldn't do, that drives me more than anything else, to live the richest life I can live. And it's to balance those two things, it's to balance the times of wintering, of stillness, of introspection with the times of going out into the world and, putting yourself out there and doing something big and brave, which is my hashtag, that is beyond your comfort zone, that you don't think you can do. Like it's for me anyway. And I don't say for a moment, like, I always say, I'm not saying in writing my books or doing podcasts like this that I want anyone to live their life like me. In fact, I'd rather you didn't live your life like me, because that would be too much competition. I want you to live your life like you. And if there's anything in my story that can inspire you, then that is what I'm trying to put into the world. Because as I always say, like we all have sad stuff. My sad stuff was that I couldn't have a baby with the man that I love, and then I went on to lose that man. But I think you have to take your sad shit stuff and turn it into something good for yourself, number one, and if you can, for other people. That's my life philosophy, along with struggle well, which we talked about in the last podcast and actually is in my book.
I always sat with that for a long time, struggle well. There's an awful lot of meaning to that. I often refer to it sometimes on the really, really bad days. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you struggling well with this?
Yeah.
Or are the wheels really falling off?
Yeah.
And often they're not falling off at all. I'm just not struggling well. I think that's a good lesson for life. You mentioned about how I'm gonna hash up the pronunciation now, but I'm gonna go with this. So Chomolungma. Yay.
Yay. Very good.
Good, thank you. Saving your life. And I'm just wondering, you mentioned cycling back to your swim across the English Channel and the London Marathon. And has that altered perhaps your perception of place and your connection with the places where you've had these adventures? Is there a new meaning to the English Channel and London for you now? And
yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because there isn't, what I've tried to put in this third book is sort of everything that's landed in terms of everything that's landed into. I was hesitated for a moment because I saw it come up on the screen that someone chickened out on the pronunciation of Chomolungma. But you did brilliantly, Berenice. But yeah, like I've tried to put into this third book everything that I've sort of like realized in life or that has you know, has settled as sort of key philosophies, I suppose. And the relationship with the sea and the mountains, and particularly the Channel and Chomolungma, is so profound for me. And it is so connected to my fertility story. And for me, and I never knew that when I embarked on the journey, that this would be the result. But, you know, I write in 21 Miles, my second book, the moment when I realized that swimming the Channel was just like going through IVF, you know, because I wasn't a very good swimmer, but I was doing all the right things in terms of learning how to do the crawl and do all the training. And then I realized that actually, because I did this relay and the weather turned bad and we were fished out and we didn't get across. I was swimming it as part of a team. It wasn't my solo attempt. And at that point, I realized that whether I got across the Channel was out of my control. And it was terrifying because I thought there's a very real chance I'm going to fail at something again. You know, I failed at 11 rounds of IVF and now I failed to get across. I might fail to get across the Channel. Now, in actual fact, I did swim across the Channel, and I put that very much down to the Channel allowing me to do that. And I do describe it as my version of giving birth, because it was 17 hours, 44 minutes and 30 seconds of pain, eclipsed by euphoria when my feet touched the sand in France. And then I ran the London Marathon, and it's very different. I mean, I'm delighted I did it, and it's sort of the jam in the sandwich, as it were, but like it's very different from the sea and the mountains, because if you start in Greenwich and you run to the Mall, you don't stop, you'll get there. But the mountains is like the sea, you know, they decide whether you're going to climb them. And you have to listen to that. And, you know, I had 3 attempts on Chomolungma. My first was a non-attempt because the mountain was closed due to COVID and I couldn't go. Then my second attempt, I wasn't able to summit for a whole range of reasons. And then I did summit on my third attempt, but I had this terrible accident on the way down. And this accident was nothing to do with the mountain, and it was nothing to do with me. It was a man-made accident. I got hit by an oxygen bottle, which broke my leg in the death zone. And then there was a load of other shit on top of that. And if the weather had been bad, I would have died. And I did look death in the face, because at one point I got altitude blindness. I'd broken my leg. I couldn't see. And I just thought, that's too high for helicopter rescue. I just thought, I don't think I'm going to get down. But I did get down, and I credit that to Chomolungma. And I did feel, after both those things, and where I am now is that like nature is my God, you know? And I just have she didn't give me a baby, but she did allow me to swim the Channel, which was part of my healing process. And then she saved my life. And this goes back to what we were talking about at the moment. That's all bollocks to some extent. I know that. I know it's all woo-woo and bollocks, you know, but that's how I've made sense of it. It makes sense to me, and I love it. And so I'm holding on to it. Yeah, that's how profound that relationship is. And it just makes everything good in life for me. You know, it makes sense of everything. It makes sense of all the pain, and it's something to take forward for me as I progress towards death, which will, she can't save me ultimately. She won't.
It makes sense to me completely. I started revisiting places where I've had trauma, or where I've sort of done, I've had the lowest of lows, and I've gone back to visit them over the past few years. And that's hard, but actually sometimes nature, the planet, places can can save us too. I absolutely can see that as well. I think it's very poignant. Our sense of place and our sense of belonging in the world can be really rattled when we're not living the life we expected we were going to live.
Yeah. Oh,
and I love that analogy as well with swimming the channel and
yeah,
totally. I love that. Yeah.
But would you share a place with us, or is that too personal a question that you've returned to? Because I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to talk about it, just with a warning that I'll avoid some keywords here, but that one of the places actually was, this is going to sound completely nuts, but it's a farm shop. Just one of those random things. And it was actually at the time when my last IVF was failing. I was waiting to come off the drugs, waiting to bleed, all that, yeah. And we'd gone to stay on a railway carriage in Wales, in Pembrokeshire. I haven't been back there yet, but I will do one day, but not right now. And a few years later, with the dog, so different life, I think we started the podcast. Yes, we had. Yeah, the podcast, we'd already been doing the full stop. So it's within the last nearly 5 years of the podcast. And we stopped on the side of the road, and it was the same farm shop that we'd stopped in on all the way, doing all of this stuff before. I didn't realise it was the same road, which is odd because I thought I might have done, but I didn't until we saw this farm shop. And I walked in, completely fell apart, thinking I would be better because I've got a dog now and I'm doing different things and I've moved on and this is all okay. And actually I wasn't okay. And I went back on the way between Storyhouse this year and going down to stay further down in Wales. And actually went in and was like, okay, this is emotional, but I'm okay. I can lean into it. I'm okay with that. Last time I just literally went slightly in his size. I had a huge panic attack, massive panic attack, when I went in with the dog. But this time I went in just on my own, and yeah, I cried. I cried in the car park of the farm shop. But that's kind of how random sometimes I think these traumatic events can be. But I was like, oh, okay, I've done that now. I've done the snotty crying, and I've done that bit. And I think next time I go back, I'll probably cry again. But that's okay. That's all right. I can do that, and it kind of made me feel a bit braver about going to other places since. I've been to one since, which is a particular beach that I was gonna literally just walk out into the sea and not do swimming, and I was determined that was going to be the end. There was no point to me anymore, and I have been back there. And yeah, I was able to do the snotty crying and sit on the beach and learn from that too. So I think that sense of place and going back and revisiting sometimes, and just giving like a life book or a meaning to it.
Yeah.
Well. And being kind about ourselves. When you talk about self-love and delving into that, then yeah, there's a lot of stuff. I think there's a need to keep going and going and going, but pausing and going, okay, who am I? Where have I come from this? There's a lot I can take from that too, Jessica. Thank you for asking that question. We're meant to be asking you questions, but thank you for asking me. I hope that made some degree of sense to the listeners and to everyone.
I love that. It's like these it's sort of like a pilgrimage, right? And I think it's so important.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, just really, I
love that word pilgrimage as well, because I'm not particularly religious in any way. Apologies if that offends anybody, but I'm not. I had struggles with all of that, but I do love actually some of the work of Sheridan Voysey. He talks an awful lot and writes about pilgrimages, and I love that. Any programs about those sorts of walks and the winter walks, anything around walking and nature. And Sarah, I know you're nodding because that's important to you as well. The process of walking, of being out in nature, and just some kind of like catharticism about that kind of pilgrimage to somewhere, and to revisit things and to just connect with nature again. I think just gets us out of our head and into moments. Right, I'm waffling on.
Nature is so
save me.
Nature is so important. Yeah, I really think it's so healing. Yeah.
Yeah, and that idea of the found family as well, I can very much relate to that. I'm quite sure that the reason I could go into the farm shop and have a good snotty cry was because of Storyhouse.
Yeah.
Absolutely knows my found family that did that.
Yeah. It was amazing, Storyhouse Chester. Yeah. Amazing.
You
Like,
reduced us all to tears, you know.
oh, it just blew me away.
Yeah.
Extraordinary experience. Yeah, really.
Yeah. And we do it all again. Spoiler for us, but there we go. All again soon.
Jessica, we had a question come in from our audience.
Yeah.
Would you do a swim challenge again? Because this particular person was watching Naiad last night and she was thinking of you.
You wouldn't be the first. Yeah. It's a really great question. I love that film, by the way. I was very, very lucky. I got to see it at the London Film Festival, its first UK screening. And actually, not Diane Naiad herself, but I've forgotten her name now, but her friend and coach, who's played by Jodie Foster, was there at the screening. So it's very exciting. And I loved the film. And my goodness, what an incredible woman she is. What I feel about so often when I give talks, I gave a talk on Thursday actually up in the Wirral at a rugby club for a group of people, and someone always asks at the end, "Oh, what's your next adventure?" And I always say, "Have I not done enough? Have I not, like it's the Channel and Chumalongma, not enough." So in terms of like big swims, or big mountains, done. But the sea and open water and the mountains and nature generally, like I have to keep going back to them. They are a home to me now. And particularly in the way, like I feel like Chumalongma is my God, but I feel like the water is my home. And I write about this in the book. And so I have to go back. And when I'm there, I feel like it's loved and I feel a sense of safety, weirdly, even though I hate the cold. So I am trying to I try and swim every week in water, not always open water, even if it's for a short amount of time. And I'm trying to do a small swimming adventure. So last year I did the Scilly Swim Challenge and went to the Scilly Islands for the first time, which was amazing. This year I'm thinking of doing the Hellespont swim in Turkey. It's it's a small, very, very famous swim made famous by Lord Byron between Asia and Europe. And I'm also trying to swim in new locations, like my target, because I'm a big list lover and I'm a big goal setter, obviously, but sometimes they can be small goals. I'm trying to swim in 25 new locations. So in answer to your question, water is really important, small swimming adventures, but like the big swims and the big mountains, that's done.
Thank you, Jessica. So now let's plug your book. I know
I think you have, haven't you? I think you've done a very good plug of it.
When's it coming out? Where will it be? How can we get it? All that good stuff.
Yeah, all the good stuff. So it's coming out on the 7th of March, although the launch is on the 5th of March, and it's available from all good book shops and online retailers. In fact, if you're someone who's passionate about reading and independent bookshops, then you can go and order it from your local bookseller. But yes, of course, it's available on Amazon. It's for pre-order now, and the audio is going to be available. We talked about that on Audible and Spotify. And if you want to reach out to me in any way, I'm my website. You can do that through my website or any of my social platforms. And actually, I have just started a Substack. I don't know if you guys know about Substack, which is apparently the big next thing after Instagram, specifically for writers and content creators. So I'd love you to follow me on Substack if you're interested in hearing from me more regularly. And do reach out. I love hearing from people.
I love Substack, actually. It's really good, and Medium. So
yeah, it is.
You might find a certain podcast on there at some point.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think, obviously with your podcast, you can send that out to, well, I don't know quite how podcasts work, but the real challenge of a lot of the social platforms, which I think Substack is trying to combat, is that you're beholden to the algorithm as to whether people see your content or not. Whereas on Substack, people give you their email address and then you can go directly. I mean, you can read it on the app, but your podcasts, your voice notes, your emails, your videos, or whatever you want to create goes straight to the people, into people's inboxes. So you're not beholden to the algorithm, which I think is potentially going to make it a great platform for people.
Yeah. Good. Fantastic.
Wow.
I quite like it because the 7th of March is actually my birthday, so it feels like it's my kind of like best present ever.
Oh, well, no, even better, because you can come on the 5th and then you can do something even more lovely on your birthday.
I should just sit somewhere and read Save Me from the Waves.
No, don't do that on your birthday.
Oh, yeah, I know. Honestly, a day with books is just my happy place. I was listening to something. Oh, what was it? It was QI. It's a random fact, but it was on QI. I happened to watch a repeat of it the other night, and it was about how more people need the loo in bookshops, because apparently it's so relaxing. It relaxes all the body, including.
Oh, really?
Yeah, apparently random fact. I was like, I don't think I've had that experience, but apparently, yeah, that's the thing. Bookshops are just that calming that people go into.
Oh, do you know what? I have the opposite experience in bookshops, although I'm trying to get over it, which is that I get palpitations about all these books that I want to read. I never get to read.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I get kind of like, how many can I possibly take home? How can I do this? And I'm reading a book. I can't remember the title of it, but it's around the UK in bookshops. It's Robin Ince.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And he just talks about how he just goes into a book. He cannot physically pass one. And he's never known to come out with just one book. He has to come out with several, which Sarah can give credit to, because actually when we went down to London before Christmas, we went down the bookshop we wanted to go to, Words on the Water, which is the canal barge on Camden Lock, wasn't open, so we ended up in Hatchards at St Pancras. And we all came out with I think we all came out with more than one book. I know I did you, Sarah?
I came out with 3. I wasn't supposed to be spending any money.
You're being very, very good. You're being very good. Yeah.
There's something so good about books, because you feel like you're improving yourself. You know, it's not like buying a cake or something, although cakes do. I do love a cake, you know, like, and that does improve me. But like books, you feel like you're learning. Yeah. I'm reading, just a plug for a book, I'm reading Lessons in Chemistry at the moment, which I know is a bit late to the party because most people have read it, but it's bloody amazing. So, and and actually, if you want a really good feel-good read, it's the way to go.
I haven't read it yet. It's on my very, very, very ginormous
I know.
Bookshelf.
It gave it to me last summer and it's been sitting there, but it's really great. Yeah. It's a novel.
Fantastic. We will pass that on to the No Mo Book Club as well. Which, yes, you are on the website for the No Mo Book Club.
Yes, I am. I lovely Rosalind. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, amazing. So I've been reading that too, and that was in our latest newsletter as well. So congratulations.
Oh, yes, my interview for her. Yeah. I wrote over the new year. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Jessica, how would you feel if someone started your wiki page and then started bringing up the BBC to say, get her on Desert Island Discs?
Yeah, I would kiss them if they were open to that. Yes.
I just wanted to check that you wouldn't be, insulted if someone started that.
No.
So there's a challenge out there to one of our audience.
No, to be frank, having a Wikipedia page is something. I don't have a Wikipedia page, and
yeah, no, I've just looked.
Yeah, and it's really funny actually. Amnesty International, because I became a woman of suffragette spirit a few years ago. They nominated various women, and they said that they were going to do this project, which is to get more women Wikipedia pages, because actually women are very underrepresented on Wikipedia, and it is true that if, and sorry that I'm saying this to you, Michael, because you're a man, but you are asking the lovely question because you are a lovely man. It is true that if I was a man, I probably would have a Wikipedia page. Yes, so that is something. But when I've got a Wikipedia page and when I've been invited on Desert Island Discs, then I will know that I've done enough in the world. But yeah.
It's a little bit like climbing Everest, isn't it? Because actually, I was reading an article and it brought you to mind on female mountaineers and how they were all forbidden from climbing Everest, and then when they did, did it skirts?
Yes, yeah.
The history of female mountaineers is a fascinating read. Mountain climbing is no woman's work. Apparently, was about the of the Matterhorn.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm sad to say, Berenice, that although things are changing, you know, there is, and I'm sure they're changing on Wikipedia too, but there is still a lot of misogyny in the mountaineering community, and there's definitely a lot of ageism, and you know, and in the world, you know, but that's another podcast. Not for today. This has been a joy, and thank you, Michael, for suggesting that. If anyone wanted to do that, no, you know, you don't have to. Life's too short. You should get on with doing the things you want to do. But if someone did, then yes, I might kiss them.
Well, I think actually, I know we've probably over time, but I think it's actually a good way for someone to repeat back to you, because you talked about how you don't want people to feel that they have to do what you do, but there are so many women that get inspired by you, particularly in our community, because you drop your name and it's, Jessica.
I don't think that's true, but you're so...
No. It is true. I wouldn't bullshit you because that's not what I do. But when I listen around, and the two girls here will bloody tell the same thing. Yeah. So, yeah, it'll let someone repay you by doing that, I think. That's what needs to happen.
You've just sort of made me, like, I can feel the tears in my eyes. So, bless you. You know, like, it's hard being human, isn't it? You know, it's hard. It's hard being human. And so, so things like that, you know, mean a lot. And I know, you know, this is sort of a bit of an emotional place to end. But, you know, like, I know that a lot of the stuff that I've done has come out of not being able to be a mother, you know, and trying to be good enough. And, you know, like I talked about this talk on Thursday, and I said that there's one point that I said, oh, you know, like I went through 11 rounds of IVF. I know I'm a bit ashamed about that. And then some woman spoke up in the audience. She said, you shouldn't be ashamed about that. And actually I write my speeches, and I didn't write that, but I just sort of threw it in at that moment. And I thought, you know, like, why did I do that? And, you know, it's the same. I sometimes feel a little bit ashamed about the fact that I've done all these things. And I know that part of it comes out of feeling inadequate. And, you know, will it ever be enough? You know, like, if I get a Wikipedia page and get invited on Desert Island, will it be enough? Who knows? But in that moment, when you just said that, it really meant a lot. So thank you. Thank you very much.
I've loved this time, and I know everyone else has.
Oh, thanks, guys. Thanks. And hope to see everyone who's here who wants to hear more blah on please come to my launch. And you're very, very welcome. I have a big house to fill. And of course, we'll repeat some of these things, I'm sure, in the event, but there will be other things there, other treats to be had, I promise you.
Thank you so much, Jessica.
Thanks, Jessica.
For your time and your inspiration and being you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you want to find out more about our podcast, or you have a burning topic we have not covered, please reach out to us, as we'd like to be as inclusive and diverse as possible. Or you may even want to reach out to one of the presenters. You can find out all the ways to do that at our website, www.thefullstoppod.com. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and LinkedIn. But while you're at our website, please consider subscribing to our listeners list, as well as becoming a member of our private online community, which helps us fund the podcast and some of our other projects. We would also love it if you could rate the podcast on the platform you are using, and this will help the algorithm get us in front of more of our community. And as always, it's important for us to let you know you are not alone.